Let's talk about this inside look into Ballerina Farm's life, Hannah Neeleman. There was an article in the Times that did a sort of expose. They went to visit Ballerina Farm on her Utah farm. They visited her 8 children, her husband, sat down for this interview, and everyone is talking about it. So what's going on with Ballerina Farm? Is she in a prison of her own making? Is she a victim of the oppressive structure of marriage and the oppressive trad wife life? That's what we're going to talk about today. And if you're new here, welcome to The Shift with Gina, where we talk about a lot of women's cultural issues, especially how they relate to women's health and healthy whole women to build strong families and a thriving society. I have been critical of the trad wife trend before. You can go watch any of my past episodes where I talk about this obsession with the trad wife and how I think it's not rooted in true tradition, and it's really more of an Instagram aesthetic than it is anything else. So I always appreciate anytime someone's going to embark on a thoughtful commentary or criticism of the trad wife trend. So I opened up this article with an open mind because I thought to myself, I would like to see some thoughtful commentary on Ballerina Farm because she's just exploded in the last few years. Everyone knows who she is, millions and millions of followers. Even more than that, her videos get so much engagement and tens of millions of views. Everyone knows who Ballerina Farm is, and she has been propped up as the trad wife idol, the center of the trad wife trend. So I opened this up in good faith, and I want to go over a little bit today. I'll have to say overall, I was just a bit disappointed with the article. I didn't feel like it gave me insight into Hannah's life that I didn't kind of already know from what I could see on social media. Maybe you disagree with me, but like I said, I love hearing thoughtful commentary on the trad wife trend. I just don't think this was it. So let's go over this. Who is the writer here? Megan something, but it's entitled Meet the Queen of the Trad Wives and Her 8 Children. Hannah Neeleman, known to her 9 million followers as Ballerina Farm, milks cows, gives birth without pain relief, and breastfeeds at beauty pageants. Is this an empowering new model of womanhood or a hammer blow for feminism? And there's this gorgeous picture of Hannah in this beautiful royal blue dress with her 8 children, her husband holding the youngest baby. They are a beautiful family. They really are, just like genetically blessed parents with beautiful kids, and they look like they just belong on a farm. They really do. So the beginning of this article, written by Megan Agnew, I don't know who she is, but the Sunday Times. A lot of the drama that came out recently with Hannah Neeleman was when she went to a beauty pageant, Mrs. American, 12 days postpartum. 12 days. And that was her 8th child being born. So in August 2023, she went to Vegas so she was invited back to the city to compete in Mrs. World. And that's when she put on all the dresses and even a swimsuit and spray tanned, all of that. 12 days postpartum. For any moms out there, you know that not a lot happens 12 days postpartum for most people. It really is the time where you're at home, healing, breastfeeding. And if you have multiple kids, of course, you're still going to be taking care of the other kids too. But, you know, I had my second child not long ago, about 10 weeks ago. And the 12th day postpartum, I was definitely still resting. I had to get up and about to take care of my first, of course, a lot sooner than I did postpartum with my first child. But you also heal a lot faster after your first pregnancy. If it's your second or third, fourth, or 8th pregnancy, your body just naturally heals a lot faster. That's just how it is. I'm not saying that it's normal to go do a beauty pageant, travel out of state and go do a beauty pageant 12 days postpartum. She talks in this article about how she knew it was coming, so they were preparing for it, they were planning for it. And during the pregnancy, she was doing ice baths and she was weightlifting before the kids got up, and she was staying as fit as possible because she knew she had this event coming up just after she was going to give birth. Of course, she didn't know exactly when the baby was going to be born. They knew it was going to be pretty close, the date of the pageant and the date of the child's arrival, but she was preparing herself for it. And for this baby, she said, according to the article, it was a 1-push baby. And she was unsure on the 5th day about whether she was actually going to make it to the pageant. She said she looked at her husband, Daniel, and said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go. This is a lot. I was bleeding and swollen and milk was coming in. When this drama ensued, because a lot of people had opinions about this on the internet was really divided. Half the people were like, this is really unhealthy. Why are you promoting this image? You should be resting 12 days postpartum. And the other half of the internet was like, we should be supporting her. This is her choice. You want women to make the choices they want to make. We should support women who keep doing their dreams, even though they're a mom, blah, blah, blah. And you can go back and look at the episode I did on this whole thing. My whole thing was, the first thing that came to my mind was, this is actually what pretty much all of our ancestors did. They had multiple kids. And within days of having kids, they were back out in the field working hard labor. That was just the reality of many generations before us. Women did not have a luxurious maternity leave. They did not have 6 weeks to rest in bed because of the nature of the world. The world was cruel before modern society. It was oppressive to both men and women. It's not unique to men, not unique to women. Both men and women were oppressed in their own ways. And women, of course, when it came to pregnancy and birth, before modern medicine, many women died in childbirth. Many women struggled with poor health and they had to deliver a baby in the fields, put the baby on their back and go back to work doing hard labor. That was the reality for many of our ancestors, sadly. So it's definitely not the first time in history that a woman has had to get back into things postpartum. But the difference that I highlighted in my past episode was that our ancestors had no choice. They were working hard labor, they were working the fields, whatever they were doing in order for their family to survive, in order to bring in some kind of revenue or some way, some goods for their family to survive in these harsh conditions. That's very different than an influencer going to a beauty pageant when she's still bleeding and struggling with breastfeeding. It's very different. So, there is a difference there, but it is worth it to point out the context that, yes, this is her 8th child. So her recovery was a lot different than somebody who it's like their first or even maybe their second. So then she goes on to talk about how she did it. They took the 2-hour flight with a newborn to Vegas. The husband and 7 children followed with other members of the family to help out. And she was on stage by her 12th day and she had just stopped bleeding. So this was one of the many things that put Ballerina Farm on people's radar. And she, at this point, was really crowned the queen of the trad wives. And she sort of remained that way. And so this article goes on talking about their background. And this is all stuff that you can see online. I actually wrote an article for Evie Magazine maybe a year and a half ago, where I wrote about Hannah's background and how she went to Juilliard for ballet. She met her husband, Daniel, when they were in college. And at this point, everyone kind of knows, well, I mean, I would think most people know that he is the heir to JetBlue. So his father is the owner of JetBlue. His father is worth $500 million, something like that. And it was really cute. There's a little tidbit in this article that when they first met, Daniel said he was like ready to marry her. He just was in love with her. He wanted to marry her. And she made him wait like 6 months before giving him a first date. And the way that they got their first date was she told him that she was flying back to New York on JetBlue. And she didn't know that his father owned the airline. So he said, oh, okay, that's interesting. Which flight? And she told him which flight. He's like, oh, I'm on that flight too. He made a call to get the seat right next to hers on the flight, so they could sit together and they could talk. And that was the start of their romance. I actually think that's kind of cute. Now, this article, this writer sort of portrays that as this guy's kind of a creepy jerk. And you get that sense through the entire article, is that the writer is not being very kind to Daniel. There are many points in here where she says, he's been the one directing their lives. He hasn't really had to sacrifice much. Hannah had to sacrifice everything. They've done everything on his terms. He wanted to move to a farm, so that's what they did. He wanted her to have birth without medication, so that's what they did. And so there's this common thread through the whole article, which I found to be quite uncharitable. And it's just, you can tell this writer went in with a feminist lens and was not open at all to whatever the Neelamans believe and whatever their value system is. It's just this woman could only see things through the feminist lens. God forbid the husband leads the wife. God forbid the husband comes up with ideas for the family. It was just a bit uncharitable to him. Ladies, how would you like to lose 10 pounds or more in 10 weeks? Come join my group coaching program called Fit and Lean, where I help hundreds of women finally get the results they're looking for, even if they've been frustrated with their weight loss process so far. I help you with nutrition, workouts, lifestyle habits. You get a sample meal plan, a recipe book, a workout plan, and of course, a weekly group coaching call with me and constant communication with me online. I help you figure out what to eat, what kind of workouts to do. And if you have been frustrated with the process so far and you're confused about what to do, what to eat, and how to make it all happen, this group is the place for you. This challenge has produced so many amazing results for women for all ages, 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s and 60s. So come join us. The link is in the description in the show notes. Just click on it and you'll find more information about this program. It's really a great way to get ready for maybe you have an event coming up or a wedding or a graduation, whatever it might be. There's nothing wrong with wanting to look better and feel better, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to lose weight and change your physique a little bit. And that's what this program is all about. We give you tools to get sustainable results. So not only do you get the weight loss in the amount of time that you're in the group, but you also get to keep the weight off, and we teach you how to keep those sustainable results for the rest of the year and for the rest of your life. So come join us. It's a fantastic group, and you're going to lose 10 pounds in 10 weeks. But anyway, I thought that was a cute way for them to meet. I think it's adorable that he pulled a few strings. I know people get really mad when they hear about how much money the Neelemans have. Some people say that they're cosplaying the farm life. I don't feel that way at all, because I've always thought, you can see on her page, she works hard on the farm. She wakes up early. She goes to milk the cows. The kids are involved with whatever needs whatever things need to be done on the farm. I don't see Hannah as somebody who's just putting on a costume. They live on like 380 acres or something insane like that. And they're preserving this really beautiful piece of land in Utah. They're Mormon, of course, that's a relevant thing. And it's a huge part of how they approach their life. And they talk about their faith a little bit. Daniel says that they don't plan for kids. If they pray and if they feel like God is telling them to have another kid, they have another kid. So I'm sure that they're going to have more. And that, of course, was a very strange thing for this writer to hear. And Mormonism is definitely related to Hannah and her family, and especially someone like Nara Smith and Lucky Blue Smith, like they're Mormon. And it's not a coincidence that you see a lot of these trad wife influencers who come from the Mormon background. They didn't really dive into this in the article, but it's definitely a relevant detail. There was a part where she talked about giving birth without any medication, giving birth at home. And she said there was one child who was born with an epidural. And she said Daniel wasn't there because he had to do some kind of delivery on the farm, wasn't there for the actual birth. And she opted in for an epidural. And she said it was kind of awesome to give birth without with pain medication. And again, this is where it's kind of painted in the light, as in Daniel is forcing her to give birth unmedicated. And she said it was kind of great to give birth without the epidural. The writer wanted to ask her about birth control. And she said, but we are surrounded by so many of her children, and Daniel is back in the room now too. And so she makes Daniel seem like he's this hovering figure that is like controlling everything that Hannah does. There's this one line. It says, I can't, it seems, get an answer out of Neeleman without her being corrected, interrupted, or answered for by either her husband or a child. Usually I am doing battle with steely Hollywood publicists. Today I am up against an army of toddlers who all want their mom and a husband who thinks he knows better. Very obvious, the agenda here, very obvious what her lens was going into this. I think that a lot of people are just not used to being around big families. When you're a mom and you've got multiple kids, it is very, very normal to be interrupted by your children when adults are talking. Kids are kids. It's very normal for kids to interject themselves into a conversation. And she makes it sound like this is an oppressive environment for Hannah. She makes it sound like it's an oppressive thing that her husband will interject and be in the conversation and talk about his wishes and how they did certain things in their life because he envisioned it for them. They paint it as if Hannah is some kind of victim of this patriarchal oppressive structure of trad wife. And that kind of annoys me a little bit because Hannah very obviously made these choices. She very obviously married Daniel and they had similar values. They were both Mormon and they wanted to build this life together. And if you have at all followed her profile over the last few years, especially when they decided to move to Utah, it was very clearly something that Hannah wanted to do. There is a part in the article that everybody's talking about on TikTok. It's just one line where it says that Daniel says that Hannah will sometimes spend a whole week in bed from exhaustion because it's such a difficult life sometimes. Of course, 8 kids. Apparently they don't have childcare. They do have someone to clean the house. They have hired help to clean the house, but Hannah does all of the grocery shopping herself with the kids in tow. She obviously makes all of the meals from scratch. So she's stretched thin, not to mention all of the work they have to do on the farm together. So Daniel admitted that sometimes she has to spend a week in bed because she's exhausted. And everyone on Twitter and TikTok are globbing on to this one line and they're making it sound like her life is so awful because, oh my gosh, she spends a week in bed because she's so exhausted. And it kind of reminded me of this tweet here that sort of went viral on Twitter. Everyone's been talking about this and I want to show it because it kind of, it proves how the homesteading and the housewife vision sometimes gets romanticized. And this is part of the problem. So let's take a look at this. Zoomer T says, I really think in 20 years time, or maybe even 10, there will be a big divide between the women who choose to stay independent and live the boss babe life versus the women that choose to become a wife and mother living a much slower paced life. The independent boss babes will be stressed out. Their adrenal glands will be completely burnt out. The good men will have settled down with children. They will have missed their fertile window with minimal chance of having a family, come home to an empty apartment, and they won't even have much to show for their career. The wife and mother will be building a legacy through her children and cultivating a strong family, supporting her husband and devoting time to loving him, cooking healthy meals, investing in her own hobbies and self-care, creating a loving home, and raising wonderful children. It's so sad so many women are choosing the wrong path. This is written by a young woman who is not married and doesn't have children. Okay, so she didn't mention homesteading in this, but she has the picture of like the quintessential trad wife picture of this woman out in the field, this beautiful woman dressed so pretty, holding the baby. You know, it's become such a meme online. And I read this and I read this tweet before I read this Ballerina Farm article. And my first thought was, of course, I want more women to get married and have kids. But you guys think that motherhood is a slow-paced life? You think that motherhood is this frolicking in the fields, very easy, simple, so sweet, beautiful fairy tale life? I think we should be a little bit more realistic. Okay, motherhood is hard when you have, especially when you have multiple kids. Motherhood is not easy. It is not a slow-paced, relaxing lifestyle that doesn't drain your adrenal glands. I know many women who are in my women's health group who come to me with drained adrenal glands because motherhood is so stressful. And so I don't think it's helpful when we romanticize motherhood and wifehood like it's this beautiful journey that's just going to help you feel better about yourself and you're going to feel so much more feminine. It takes grit. It takes guts to be a hands-on full-time mom to multiple kids. I only have 2. And let me tell you right now, we have very busy days. She's like, oh, you get to invest in your own hobbies. You don't really have that much time when your kids are younger, especially if you have multiples, to invest in your own just sort of passions and hobbies. You know, my day starts at 5. I was up at 5 this morning to pump before the baby wakes up. And baby wakes up 6:30. I feed the baby, spend the time with the baby. And then after the baby goes down for the first nap, I go to work out first thing in the morning because I want to work out before both of the kids are up. And then I get up the toddler, get up the baby, got to make breakfast. it's such a busy morning, even the first few hours. And then you're taking the kids here and there, taking the kids to appointments, or you're taking the kids to outside to maybe learn some or get some energy out. And then if you are working part-time from home, you got to fit in some work when the kids are sleeping or when there's a little bit of downtime. And it just goes nonstop. When the kids go to bed, then you got to clean up everything, and you got to organize all the toys, put everything in the dishwasher, and make sure the food's put away, make sure there's lunch packed for your husband the next day. And then after that's all done, then you got to make sure that you got some extra work done for it's so much happening when you're a mom. I think it's unfair and unproductive to pretend like motherhood is this very easy, simple, relaxing lifestyle. And I actually think that it's a good thing for people to see the realness of how Ballerina Farm is sometimes so exhausted she has to spend a week in bed. Because that is the reality. Like if I'm stretched this thin with 2 kids, imagine how much she's stretched thin with 8 kids. And that's a reality that we should be honest about. That doesn't mean that her life is not rewarding, but it's a good thing to kind of see the reality of what motherhood is, because this is the truth. This is how exhausting motherhood can be, especially when you have many, many children. And I love when the right and conservatives talk about the importance of family and having children. You guys know I love that. I support that. I think it's especially important not only for our society and our falling birth rate, but I think that many women would be happier and healthier if they devoted their life to a family rather than being obsessed with their career and their, quote, independence and their self-obsession, their self-care. All the self. I think it's much healthier for us to devote ourselves to something much bigger, like a family, like children. However, the right often goes down this hole of pretending like motherhood is just this easy thing and that you should have as many kids as possible, even if you can't afford it. Because that's the thing, just have as many kids as you can. And then they prop up people like Ballerina Farm and they're like, see, look how beautiful she is. She can do it. Then you can do it too. It's okay if you want 8 kids, that's fine. But let's be realistic, guys. It is exhausting. It is exhausting to have that many children and to run a farm. And there is this recent obsession with homesteading. Everyone is like, all of these Twitter accounts that talk about they compare, as if these are the only 2 options. They compare the corporate cubicle life to homesteading. They're like, why would you want to work in a cubicle for 8 hours a day when you can go homestead on a farm? And I'm like, are those your only 2 options? Also, you live in a major city in an apartment. Do you know how much work it takes to run a farm? Do you know how much work it takes to homestead? There's this weird obsession. It turns into memes and it like almost looks like parody online. You people have no idea how hard it is to run a farm. I spent a little bit of time on a farm and I saw how exhausting it was. I couldn't do it 24/7, let alone with kids in tow. So there's also this weird obsession with homesteading that doesn't highlight the realities of what homesteading actually is and how much work it actually is. And same thing with motherhood. So I don't think it's a bad thing that we're seeing Hannah be more real and honest about how hard her lifestyle is, because I think it's good for young women to know what's ahead of them. And if that's what you want and you're ready for that, go for it, do it. But it's perfectly okay to want fewer kids than that. It's okay to want 2 kids. It's okay to want even 1 kid. And I know conservatives are going to get so mad at me for saying that, but I think it's much more important to raise kids, to focus on the quality of raising kids rather than focus on the quantity of kids. I'm not saying that Ballerina Farm's not focusing on the quality. I think that from what I can see, it seems like they're doing a great job. But remember, they do have a lot more resources than like an average person whose husband makes $60,000 a year has. So that's why I think when the right props up somebody like Hannah and they're like, see, you got to have 8 kids too. It's not necessarily the reason that you should have 8 kids. You should have 8 kids if you're ready for it and if that's what you really want. You don't have to have a lot of kids if you don't want to. But I feel like I digressed a little bit. So when this writer here was talking about Hannah being interrupted by her children and her husband, she made it sound like it's this horrible thing, like as if Hannah doesn't have a voice of her own. And this is why it's frustrating to me. You can't find anybody really online, any of these serious writers, who can commentate on the trad wife trend without making it seem like she's a victim of a patriarchal, oppressive husband. It just seems like we're swinging from one extreme to the next. We're going from the extreme of feminism total independence. I'm not going to give up my whole life and my body, my career for my kids. And then we're swinging all the way to the other side of this romanticized fantasy trad wife life that is really not realistic at all. And I just wish we could have people write articles that are a little bit more thoughtful to commentate on the trad wife trend without delving into the radical feminism, where you think that a woman is oppressed because her husband answers a question for her. Like, can we be real, please? You know, I read this article and I feel like her life seems beautiful to me. They have decided to work really hard on their farm and to have multiple kids. And yeah, she may spend a week in bed with exhaustion, and I don't necessarily love that, but if that's worth it to them, I don't see why that's such a big deal. I know people are going to get really mad at me for that. They're going to say that it's so horrible and that I should not endorse that. I'm not endorsing anything. I'm just saying if they have chosen that and they seem to be happy with that lifestyle, I don't know why anybody's so mad about it. It just seems like they're trying so hard to paint this as if Hannah is oppressed and she's, you know, being controlled by her puppeteer, rich, patriarchal husband. I don't necessarily see that. And in this article, they talk about how their house is a little bit chaotic. She said one of them spills a pail of milk on the floor. A whole roast chicken is being pulled from the fridge, and 3 kids gather around and eat it straight from the pan with forks. One is clattering a can opener next to my tape recorder. Sitting at the table surrounded by an ever-changing number of children. It's like these people are disgusted by kids. It's like these people are just... They put their nose up in the air. They sneer at the idea that there are a lot of kids in the house. And I say this as somebody who doesn't necessarily want a huge family. Like, I don't want 8 kids. I just don't. I don't. And that's okay to say. If you don't want 8 kids, that's okay too. But I would never go to be invited into someone's home and put my nose up and complain about the kids being kids. Like, what is wrong with people? Like, she invited you into her home to take an inside look into her life, to read an article about her, and you're complaining because the kids are doing things around you and eating and spilling stuff, and you only have half an hour to talk to her because she has to take someone to a ballet class. Like, I just found it to be a bit unfair, a bit unkind, but that's just my opinion. I think they look cute together. I think it's cute that he pulled strings to sit next to her on the plane. I do. And here's another thing that I wanted to say about people's reaction to this article. I've saw a lot of TikToks of women who get online and they're like, yeah, I admit I hate watch Ballerina Farm, because in this article, she also covers the fact that there are millions of people that hate watch Hannah, and they do. A lot of those views, tens of millions of views that she gets, many of them are from hate watchers. The one supplement that everybody should be taking, regardless of what stage you are in life, is organ meat. Organ meat capsules like these pack a huge punch for nutrition, electrolytes, minerals. They're so good for cardiovascular health, your lymphatic systems, your cognitive function. Ladies, it's even good for your hormones and your fertility. This bison trifecta here has all 3. It's got the liver, the heart, and the kidney, and it comes from grass-fed and grass-finished bison, which is known as one of the most nutrient-dense animals on the planet. And you can use my code GINA10 for 10% off any and all orders. This is a wonderful product. I take this every single day. I've taken it through my pregnancy, taken it through postpartum phases, and it's so good to support a healthy, active lifestyle. It's known as nature's vitamin. So use my code GINA10 for 10% off. You can go to the link in my show notes to get yours today. And so I've seen many women get online and they say, I hate watch Ballerina Farm, and, I really like her content, but I just feel so insecure. I feel like I'm not doing enough as a mom, and it's not fair for her to make it seem like it's so easy. It's not fair for her to set unrealistic expectations. Honey, let me tell you something. If you are watching someone else's content online and that makes you feel insecure as a mother, it makes you feel you're not doing enough as a mom, that's on you. Influencers, celebrities, whoever, nobody has any obligation to make you feel like you're doing a good job as a mom. It's not Hannah's job to sanitize or to edit her life to make you feel better about your own choices. It's not her job, and it's not her responsibility to expose every part of her private life so that you feel better knowing that they have this much money. You feel better knowing that they have this much help with cleaning or cooking or whatever. It's not their responsibility to expose their personal private life to you. And this is what annoys me. When it started coming out that Hannah was rich, people were like, she's living a false life on Instagram. She's not being fully honest. She never told people how much money she has. Why does she need to tell you how much money she has? Now, if she were online saying, guys, we're really poor, we don't make much money, if she were lying about it, that'd be something different. But she's never said a word about her income or how much money she has. She's just cooking stuff and having kids and home birthing and milking cows. And you're mad because she didn't tell you how much money her husband has. It's not anyone's responsibility to give private personal details about their finances or their life, regardless of how many followers they have, regardless of how beautiful they are, regardless of how many people watch them. It doesn't matter. It's not her responsibility to tell you that stuff. And it's also not her responsibility to make you feel good about your own motherhood. This is why I think a lot of women are not prepared to be online and scroll through social media. I don't say this in a way to be mean or try to be cruel, but I really think that if you are not emotionally prepared to consume content online without feeling really big emotions, without feeling insecure, without feeling attacked, I think maybe you need to put your phone down. And that's the problem with a lot of women. They scroll through social media and they just can't help themselves. And then they see somebody doing their own thing, looking pretty, looking skinny, having 8 kids. And then they feel awful about themselves because they're not secure with who they are. They're not secure with their own life. I look at Hannah, I could give a million reasons why I feel insecure when I look at her content. I don't, because I genuinely am very content and grateful and happy with where I am in my life. We're not rich. We certainly don't have $500 million in the bank. Or, okay, better to say, we certainly aren't worth $500 million. My husband's dad doesn't own JetBlue. We've got 2 kids. I'm not nearly as skinny as Hannah Neeleman is. I didn't bounce back from birth as well as she did. We don't live on a 300-acre farm. I don't even cook that as much as she does. I cook all of our meals, but a lot of my meals are really simple. We don't do everything from scratch. And yet I don't feel at all insecure when I look at her content, because by the grace of God, I'm content with where we are in our life. And I think a lot of women they're not in a good place emotionally. So they see someone like Hannah, they see someone like Nara, whoever else these trad wife influencers are, and they feel awful. And then they blame the influencer for making them feel insecure. If you feel that insecure from seeing a video on Instagram, that is a you problem. I say that with love, because I want you to be able to scroll through Instagram in a healthy way. I don't want you to feel horrible every time you get online. I say that with love. If you have that much of a problem seeing a woman with 8 kids frolic in the fields and milk cows and home birth, if it makes you feel that insecure, that is something that you have to address within yourself. It's not her problem. That's also all I really wanted to say about that. Again, not trying to be mean. I just think that most women, maybe not most, but a lot of women are not prepared for social media because they bring a lot of their emotional baggage and then they turn around and blame it all on the influencer. So all in all, I wasn't really that impressed with this article. I would have liked to hear some good commentary on the trad wife trend, because like I've said before, it's interesting that the trad wife trend really has become this aesthetic more than it has become rooted in tradition, because it is this very sort of costume, cosplay, fetishized way to look at one sliver of American history, the 1950s. Because when we say trad, we're obviously referring to tradition and traditional. But to which tradition are we referring? Because up until the early 1900s, it was pretty unheard of for a woman and her nuclear family to be totally separated from her extended family and from a high-trust village. Up until the early to mid-1900s, 75% of the elderly lived with their extended family. And they offered help economically to the family unit. They helped familially to help take care of kids, educate kids, cook, clean, whatever. So what tradition are we talking about here? Because I find that the trad wife trend doesn't come from true tradition. It comes from the 1950s sliver that was actually quite an anomaly, and that was rooted very much in this marketing ploy to bolster this nuclear family. So you could move people out to the suburbs, purchase a washer machine and a dishwasher and a new vacuum. And this was all part of the sort of post-war marketing ploy to establish this, quote, nuclear family. And so the nuclear family in and of itself is actually a pretty modern phenomenon if you really think about all of history. So I think that's a much more compelling way to talk about the trad wife trend than Hannah Neeleman is oppressed by her patriarchal husband who has too many opinions. That's just me, though. But you know what? A lot of people loved this article because a lot of people really like feminism and they like to see everything through the feminist lens. I just don't particularly think it's that helpful. The other thing I wanted to talk about today is this TikToker who gave up her birth control pill. And I am really seeing a Gen Z rebellion against the pill, and I love it. I love seeing all the girlies who have thrown out the pill. I love seeing you young ladies who refuse to take that garbage packed with synthetic hormones that makes you fat, suicidal, depressed, anxious, ruins your gut health, potentially makes you infertile, and just wrecks your natural hormonal cycle. I love seeing the girlies reject the pill. Let's take a look here. Her name is Madeline Argy. I never heard of her before because I'm not really on TikTok, but she's a beautiful young lady, over 7 million followers. I sound like such a grandma right now. I'm like, she's such a beautiful young lady. I don't know anything about her. Someone sent me this TikTok because of the responses to it. So we can just take a look at her video and let's see what she says here.
I feel like now is not the best time to go cold turkey on my birth control, but I have in fact not taken it since last week. So if you guys see me emerging with a whole new personality next week, don't worry. I'm just ovulating for the first time in 8 years.
It's a very quick video. She just says she's not taking her birth control pill anymore. And I find it very relevant that she's smart enough to know that when you're on the pill, you don't ovulate. A lot of young women who take the pill don't know that. Madeline knows that. She knows that when you're on the pill, you don't ovulate. And that's something that is very, very important because ovulation is important for your health, ladies, regardless of your pregnancy plans, regardless of if you want to get pregnant now or in 5 years. Ovulation is really important for your hormones because right after you ovulate, you produce a lot of progesterone. Progesterone is known as the key mood and sleep stabilizer. It's important for you to feel like to have good moods, to feel like you have enough energy. It's very, very important for sleep. And there are a lot of things related to progesterone. It's really important to help combat stress. And the more stressed out you are, the more cortisol you have in your body. And remember, cortisol is derived from progesterone. So the more stressed you are, the more progesterone is depleted. So ovulation is really important because it helps produce more progesterone in the body, which helps combat stress. And remember, the more stressed you are, the less fertile you are. And the more stressed you are, even regardless of fertility, all of your health is affected by it. So Madeline knows that you don't ovulate when you're on the pill. So she was on the pill for 8 years. And what I think is especially important about this little story here is the comments. One thing I always carry in my car or in my kid's diaper bag is a first aid emergency kit because accidents always happen and you never know what might fall at your feet. You might be on a road trip with friends, taking a vacation with family, out hiking with your kids. Whatever it is, you want to be prepared. And this kit has everything you need to treat over 30 different medical conditions and emergencies, including bleeding and bite wounds, anaphylaxis, toothaches, skin infections, UTIs, dermatitis, and more. And all you need is one kit to be prepared for unforeseen emergencies. I always have one stashed with me on the road, and now you can get one for 10% off with my code GINA10. That's 10% off of any and all purchases from the Wellness Company. And all you need is one of these to get started. So click the link in my show notes and get one for yourself. Most of the women commenting about the pill are very supportive of her coming off of it. A lot of women said, no, because once you stop, you're never going back. The sky will be bluer than blue. The birds will sing. The world will make sense. What a beautiful way to describe coming off the pill. Another girl said, girl, this is going to be good for you. You will feel you. Another one said that she lost 30 pounds after coming off of the pill. And that was 4 years ago. And she's never going back on it again because she finally felt like herself. And one girl said, just stopped after 15 years got period is normal. It's been 2 weeks since, but nothing crazy has happened so far. I think it takes weeks to months to adjust. And that's true. That's true. Because remember, when you stop ovulation, you also stop your period. Very important to understand, ladies, you don't have a true period when you're on the pill. I know a lot of girls are like, no, I bleed when I stop taking the pill and I start taking the placebo. That's not menstruation. That's a withdrawal bleed, because a period, true menstruation, can only come after an ovulation. So ovulation and menstruation, they come in a pair. They come together. So when you're not ovulating, you're not menstruating. And the pill, remember, overrides your natural hormonal cycle. And so two major hormones that are very important for everything from sex drive to sleep to mood, estrogen and progesterone, they plummet when you're on the pill. Because estrogen is supposed to naturally rise right before you ovulate. Progesterone is supposed to naturally rise after ovulation. And there is a natural rhythm and a rhyme and reason for every part of your menstrual cycle. When you take the pill, all of that plummets. And if you look at the chart, you can just go online and search like chart of hormones during menstrual cycle. You'll see how everything rises and falls. But then when you take the pill, all of those things plummet basically down to the bottom. So you're not producing the same estrogen and progesterone that you normally would. And you know what other time of your life this happens? Menopause. When you're menopausal, estrogen and progesterone will naturally start to plummet. So that's why people say when you take the pill, you are in a menopausal state. Some people say, oh, it tricks your body into thinking it's pregnant. It's not as accurate as saying that you're put into essentially a menopausal state. And do you want to be in a menopausal state when you're 25, honey? No, I don't think so. And people will say, oh, but you have progestin from the birth control pill. That's the same thing. No, progestin is a synthetic form of progesterone, and it does not have the same effect on the body as natural progesterone. So these are all really important things to know. And that's why you've got so many women in this comment section who said that coming off the pill was like one of the best decisions they ever made. They said they finally feel like themselves again and the sky is blue. A girl said, I've never felt so sane and rational. I never went back. It's been 4 years. So I love seeing this. I love seeing the girlies who are rejecting the pill. I'm so proud of all of you. I really am, because it's time that women understood the true implications of taking something like this, the synthetic hormones that are pumped through your body, even aside from the potential impact on your fertility. I did a video recently talking about birth control and infertility. That's one of the more rare side effects that could potentially come from the pill, but there's so much research showing that you are at risk for lifetime depression if you take the pill for a long time, particularly starting in your teenage years. And here's the thing about the pill. It doesn't heal your menstrual cycle. That's not an accurate thing to say, that it heals your menstrual cycle. That is a false promise. It overrides your natural hormones and totally erases your ovulation and menstruation. So it seems like your period's better, but it's not your true period. So when you come off the pill one day, which you eventually have to, your menstrual cycle is just going to be just as miserable, if not worse. There are so many alternative ways to treat your period naturally, to heal your menstrual cycle naturally. Perfect timing if you're looking for a way to do that. I'm doing an August challenge for healthy hormones. This is a holistic hormonal challenge throughout the month of August. It's only $1 a day to join. I'm going to be sending you daily wellness tasks, and I'm going to be sending you different webinars and expert interviews. So we're going to be doing a webinar on cycle tracking, a different webinar on ovulation tracking so you can learn how to naturally prevent pregnancy. I'm also interviewing a hormone expert on how to naturally heal your menstrual cycle. And you're going to be getting access to all that throughout the month. So you can go to the link in the show notes, sign up. It's only $1 a day. You're going to be getting workouts, recipes, a meal plan, all of these things that contribute to healthy hormones. And that, of course, will contribute to weight loss. So if you're on a weight loss kick right now and you're trying to shed some stubborn fat, it definitely helps to get your hormones in order. So I would highly recommend you join us for that, because unfortunately, there's not that much information out there about building healthy hormones, about learning your menstrual cycle. There's just not. So women are, unfortunately, many are convinced that the only way to treat your period or your miserable menstrual cycle is to take the pill. And it's not. It's not the only way to prevent pregnancy either. And it's definitely not a way to heal your cycle. So I love seeing all this. I'm really happy seeing the girls rejecting the pill. But remember, it's just the first step, because simply rejecting the pill doesn't mean that you've just suddenly healed your cycle. There's still some work that has to be done. So I would encourage all the women who are coming off the pill to still approach your cycle with intentionality, learn how to heal your hormones, all of that, because there's a lot of fun stuff to be done. Okay, so I'm going to go over some questions that we missed last time. I did a sort of AMA last time, and I want to go over some of the questions that I didn't get to read. Okay, here's one. How to be preparing your home family for potential chaos around election time. Yeah, really good question. I was jokingly saying this to a friend the other day, but not so jokingly. Don't have a baby during election year because it is so stressful. I struggle with a little bit of anxiety. I've kind of struggled with anxiety for a long time. I don't ever really like to talk about it because I feel like so many people just are obsessed with anxiety. I've got my anxiety. My anxiety makes me do this. But I don't want to make my personality, but I'm anxiety prone. And this time around, I've had some postpartum anxiety. You know, postpartum anxiety is it's a thing because a lot of hormonal changes. And so I've had some postpartum anxiety where I'm like staring at the wall and I'm thinking of all the horrible things that are going to happen in this country and to our family because we have total clowns running this administration. And now with this attempted assassination and with Biden like stepping down, we are a very vulnerable target for other countries to do their worst to us. Election year is so chaotic. So how to prepare for it? I'm just going to tell you what we do, like the way that I approach it. For me, the most important thing is preparing yourself spiritually. That's the source of everything for me. It might not be the answer that you want to hear, but for me, it means being very involved with our church life, with the liturgical calendar, being very diligent about daily prayers, trying to teach my kids about the lives of the saints, because I find the most comfort and peace in Christ. The battle has already been won. This is a reminder that I need to hear a lot as someone who's very anxious and I worry, I'm concerned. I worry about just getting into my car and driving somewhere and getting into an accident and the kids getting hurt. I worry about everything, you guys. I could go on for 3 hours about all the things that keep me up at night. But I find my greatest peace in Christ because I know that the battle between good and evil has already been won, and this is temporary, and that we have to keep our eyes on him. We have to be humble and continue in our own repentance. And so we try to be involved with our Orthodox parish as much as we can. And that is the first source of peace for me. Whenever I'm feeling particularly anxious, I just try to drop everything and pray. I have a little prayer book. We have a couple of them lying around the house. I have one of them in my daughter's room. I just try to pray as much as I can because you're not going to find a solution to your anxiety or your concerns or worries really anywhere else. It's definitely not going to come just from doing therapy all the time. It's not going to come from staring at the wall and meditating. Those things can help, but really the number one source is to go to the truly healed one who is Christ. So that's the first way I prepare my home and my family is I try to involve more of the church life into my home life. And then after that, another thing we really try to do is just prepare for emergencies, have medical kits. Oh, the wellness company has a really good medical emergency kit. This is actually a great segue into the wellness company. This is a first aid emergency kit, but they also have a really good medical emergency kit that has 8 different medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, amoxicillin, a lot of these things that can be life-saving if there's some sort of power outage, some sort of blackout, and God forbid somebody gets sick or there's some sort of infection and you don't have access to medicines. These are the kinds of things that we're preparing for. Like stock your house with freeze-dried food, with ammo, with a source for drinking water. Like there are a lot of water filters that you can buy. We're shopping around for one right now. You have to just prepare yourself in that way too, because you never know. You never know. Even just for us, 2 Christmases ago, it was snowing here and our electricity was out for 3 days and it was 1 degree. That's cold. My daughter was really, really young at the time. And it was really tough because we had a little generator, but it wasn't enough to last us for multiple days. So you have to be prepared because you never know what kind of weather things are going to hit. Look what happened with the Maui wildfires last year. They didn't get any assistance. People were left stranded. Hundreds of people were left stranded. And you never know. So I would say be prepared for emergencies. And number 3, stay offline as much as you can if you're getting anxious, because doom scrolling will only make you feel worse. And sometimes the internet is just a black hole of misery. They want you to be scared. They want you to feel hopeless. They want you to just be terrified of anything and everything. So I would say limit your time on social media. I've had to do that. When the attempted assassination happened, everyone was tweeting about it for days and days. Everyone's been talking about Biden and Kamala. I had 2 friends message me and they're like, you haven't really been talking about it much online. Just wondering what your thoughts are. And I told one of my friends, I was like, I'm staying offline for now. It makes me more anxious. It does. And postpartum, already having some postpartum anxiety, I don't want to make it worse. I try to stay off of it. I like to try to find other things. Sometimes, even if I have to put on like an episode of The Office, or you're going to think it's crazy, but an episode of Succession, these are like my comfort watches. If I'm cooking dinner and kids are playing or whatever, I just like turn on one of these episodes to give me just a little bit of comfort watch. I don't want to doom scroll anymore. And I feel like so many people are feeling hopeless because they're spending too much time online. So don't spend that much time online. That's another thing too. Let's see what other questions we have here. How I am insulin resistant, high A1C. How would you tackle this to reverse it? The number one way to treat insulin resistance is intermittent fasting. I'm not usually a fan of fasting, just generally, because when women come to me and they're like, I want to lose weight, I want to feel better, shed body fat, change body composition, I'm fasting. I'm like, I don't really recommend that for a lot of reasons we can get into another episode. However, for medical conditions like insulin resistance, I would highly recommend fasting, intermittent fasting. It's a great thing to do because it's going to help. It's going to really, really help with the insulin resistance. And I mean, insulin resistance is like PCOS. So if you have PCOS, you have insulin resistance. So it's a really good idea to do intermittent fasting. That's the first thing I would do. Okay. Someone said, started taking first form prenatals as directed, and they're making me nauseous. Have you ever experienced? Getting married next month and want to be prepared. Congratulations, Alyssa, on your wedding. Awesome. So she's talking about the first form prenatal multivitamins. First of all, first form prenatal multivitamins are the absolute best. I've been taking them for 5 years. If you were in your childbearing years, regardless of your pregnancy plans, which means if you have a menstrual cycle, you should be taking prenatal multivitamins every day. They have tons of nutrients that are really good for us during childbearing years to help with regular menstrual cycles, less PMS symptoms, fewer PMS symptoms. I hate it when people confuse less and fewer. So take your prenatals every day. If you want to try mine, the link is in the show notes. You can use the link there, please, so they know that I sent you. But I love them. They're fantastic. Now, have I ever been nauseous from them? Yes. I highly recommend taking them with a full meal. So when you eat a full breakfast in the morning, hopefully you're eating 30 to 40 grams of protein within an hour of waking up. Take the prenatal vitamins in the middle of the meal. So don't take them on an empty stomach. Don't take them in between meals. Take them with a meal that really helps with the nausea. If that is still making you nauseous, send me a message. There could be a few other things going on. And make sure you're drinking enough water too. So with a meal and drinking enough water at the same time. Last question. Your beliefs on how a mother should dress after having kids, cleavage. What's sexy mom? I don't really get the last question, but I get the gist of what she's saying. I'm a total prude. You guys know me. If you listen to my show, you know I am Miss Prude. Not really. I jokingly say that, but I do think that moms should dress differently after getting married and having kids. I do. I think that as a young woman, you should still be conscious of what you're wearing. I don't think that it's like a free pass to dress as slutty as possible before you get married. Of course not. But I think that something shifts for sure after you have kids. I don't think it's appropriate for you to show a ton of cleavage and to wear super revealing clothes. I don't think so. You have a bigger responsibility now. You have people looking up to you. The last thing you want is yourself to be over-sexualized out in public when you have little kids. I do think that it's a good thing to dress age appropriately. I think that age is a factor in how you should consider dressing yourself. One thing that I've always loved about my mom is my mom has always had a really good sense of how she should dress according to her age. I've watched her over the decades. I've watched her dress a little bit differently as she gets a little older. My mom is super elegant, classy. She's in great shape. She's 70 years old now, and people think that she's like, 50s, early 60s. She just looks fantastic. And she's tiny, she's petite. And I've just watched her sort of fashion evolve over the last couple of decades. And I think my mom is such a good example of how to dress age appropriately. And that, I think that starts when you have kids. I've thrown out a lot of clothes, just like way too short skirts, skin tight stuff, really low cut cleavage, stuff like that. I've just thrown it out. I just personally don't feel really comfortable. I don't want to dress that way around my daughter. Even if my daughter's not around, I don't really want to wear that. People take pictures. You got pictures of yourself with your tits hanging out online. Not a fan of it. So I would just say that's one of the ways you have to kind of think about things when you become a mom. That's all we have time for today. Thanks, everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the show. If you have enjoyed it, please share it. Please support the show by supporting any of our sponsors. All the links are in the show notes. Don't forget, with the Wellness Company, you get 10% off of all of your orders with the code GINA10. First aid emergency kit is great. We carry this everywhere. The medical emergency kit. Really good organ meat capsules. They have great bee pollen. Bee pollen is one of those superfoods we eat every morning. So thanks, everybody. If there are topics that you want me to cover in the next episode, just let me know in the comment section. Okay, bye.